advice would you have for somebody who's going to marriage counseling? How do they get the most out of it?
Don't expect your therapist to fix it. Like,
well, that's why. What do you mean don't expect them to fix it? If they could fix it, they would be doing it on their own.
Like, if all you're doing is going to therapy once a week for 1 hour, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference. You've got to really be applying what they're saying in between sessions. So if they're giving you homework to do the homework, or put into practice the things that you're learning in therapy. If you don't, you're not going to get anywhere, and like your therapist isn't going to be able to work magic in 1 hour once a week. It's just unrealistic.
Now that makes a lot of sense. That if all you're doing is checking the box, you can check the box and be like, well, this doesn't help, this doesn't work.
Yeah, we're here to guide you of what to do. It's up to you to do it and to put it into practice in between sessions. There's a lot of times where I give people homework, give them things to do in between, and so I'll follow up on it next time, like, oh, no, we didn't do any of that. Okay, well, did you try using this that we talked about last time? No, we didn't do any of that.
Yeah, so, but what do you do if you're in couples counseling so here's what I hear a lot. Yeah, I know, she won't do it, or he won't do it. They're the problem. I don't even know why we're doing this counseling. They won't do any of the work. Like, what do you do with that?
Yeah, like if you're that person whose spouse won't do the work.
Yeah. How do you manage that?
Yeah, well, you're still responsible for doing your part. So I'd say go ahead and do your part, and then talk about that in this session. There could be reasons why they're not doing it, and the therapist will help kind of dig underneath the surface of that. You can also request to see the therapist for a couple individual sessions. Like you guys each see the therapist alone, and you can let the therapist know some stuff that you're seeing. If you're not comfortable saying that in front of your spouse, that's okay to do. Now the therapist isn't going to keep secrets, so it's going to need to be brought to light. But the therapist needs to know if there's stuff going on.
Sure, that makes sense. Another thing that I see a lot of couples, well, I'll put it in the negative. I see a lot of couples don't do, but it would help them if they would do. And that is go into the sessions knowing what they want to work on.
Yeah, that really is helpful. Don't leave it up to the therapist to lead the session. Sometimes we will, but it's super helpful if you've been thinking about ahead of time, and if you even keep notes throughout the week of things that have happened, you're not sure how to handle it, or things that you want to talk about. If there was an argument, write down what happened, because a lot of times I'll have a couple come to the office and say, oh, we had a big blow up. I can't even remember what it was.
Very common.
Yeah, so I think you got mad about that, and then I said that, but people don't remember the details. Of course, it's been a week or two. So writing things down can be really helpful. Not to tell on your spouse. Like, it would be great if you both agreed to write things down. I encourage that with my couples. Like, write it down so we can talk about it next time.
In the course of a counseling session, there are going to be things that come up that maybe you hadn't even thought about. This thing makes me think of that thing, and oh, that reminds me. Sometimes couples will stunt their progress because they sort of have a gag order on each other that you're not allowed to bring up anything in counseling that we haven't already talked about. I want to know what your thoughts are on that. I mean, I'm of the mindset of, can we just agree that between the therapist and the husband and wife, that it's okay to bring up what comes to mind? I mean, nobody's trying to play a gotcha game. Nobody's trying to do that. If we can work with that level of trust, we'll get further. But I also get people don't like being blindsided.
Yeah, and some people intentionally wait till they get into therapy to bring up something because it's not safe to bring it up at home. So there's that aspect too. if someone really wants to know what is going to be talked about in therapy beforehand, I mean, if you can talk about it, okay, but I agree, you probably aren't going to be able to know everything that you're going to be bringing up. There might be something that just triggers something, and
Yeah,
so, I don't know,
yeah.
that's
If you're gonna pay a professional to help you untangle it, my 2 cents is you're gonna get further faster if you're like, hey, everything's fair game and on
Yeah.
the table, and just have respect for each other. If I know I'm gonna bring something in and if it's safe and all that, yeah, I'll give you a heads up. But I want the freedom,
Yeah.
if I think of it in the moment, to be able to bring it up.
I agree. A big red flag is if the spouse says, you're not allowed to talk about this. We're
is,
not talking
yeah.
about this in therapy. Don't bring it up. Like, don't bring up my anger or my drinking or...
And I mean, there's so many reasons why that's a red flag, but articulate something like why. Elaborate on why that's a red flag.
Well, because if you can't talk about it, then you can't work through it, and it can't get better. So the other spouse, is limited on what they're allowed to discuss, and it just isn't healthy. Like,
Right.
you
Yeah.
should be able to talk about everything.
Yeah. So there's going to be high control, and there's this elephant in the room that everybody knows is a thing, but we're supposed to pretend like it's not a thing. But yet we're paying somebody to help us get healthy, which is a crazy thing. So it's just not.
It's like
not good.
keeping family secrets.
Yeah.
And which perpetuates the sickness,
Yeah. Another one that we see with some regularity is when there is a breach of trust in the relationship. And man, I've seen this a number of times where one spouse will cheat on the other spouse, and then the spouse that cheated will flip it and turn it on the other person because they found out because they looked at the spouse who cheated's phone.
Yeah. And then they get all indignant, like,
Can't believe
you're
you would
inviting
look at my
my
phone.
privacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is what we need to talk about. You looked at my phone. I can't believe you would do that.
Yeah.
Which is, it's actually really common. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just always a little mind blown. Like really. I mean, I get from just a worldly standpoint, the best defense is a good offense kind of thing. But I mean, you cheated. Like that's the lead of the story.
Yeah.
Not how we found out.
It feels like gaslighting.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm going to make you the problem so we get the attention off of what I did.
Yeah. Well, I think that whether if it's intentional or not, it certainly has the effect of doing so.
Yeah.
So just full disclosure with electronics and all that kind of thing. A great principle of life is that people who have nothing to hide don't hide anything. So I'm a big advocate of shared passwords. You can look at my phone anytime you want. I don't have this stash of stuff that you're not allowed to look at, and vice versa. Now, with your profession, being a therapist, you're bound by HIPAA requirements.
Right.
So that's a different category.
You're not looking at my work calendar or my work phone information.
Because there is an understandable reason. And same if
Right.
somebody's in law enforcement or something like that. So that's not what I'm talking about. But in the vast majority of cases, for me, it's at least a yellow flag, if not a red flag, when it's the whole, you can't look at something. Because how is it anything other than I'm trying to hide something? Or there's something that I wouldn't want you to know or see.
I can't think of any other explanation for that.
Yeah. And what it does is creates a separateness in the relationship that is the opposite of the oneness that the marriage relationship is intended to be.